From housing to development to connectivity to the proposed seawall around Charleston, I speak exclusively with Charleston City Councilman Keith Waring, who represents District 7 for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook.
Councilman Keith Waring, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Always good to sit in with you, Quintin. It's always a privilege.
I appreciate it greatly. Obviously, you are the City of Charleston Councilman for District 7. What's new?
Right.
What's now with District 7?
Well, District 7 is like most districts. We've got some flooding problems that we're trying to get squared away. As a matter of fact, one of the first joint drainage projects between the county and the city is currently underway. It looks like nothing's happening, but a lot of plans are being drawn right now. The engineering is being done, which eventually could go out for bid. And then, the work can be done in what is called a DUWAP, the DuPont-Wapu drainage basin, which is a huge drainage basin that takes in, show you how big it is, it takes in probably it touches on 4, maybe 5 city council districts, not just District 7.
Wow, that's amazing. And tell me, what else is going on?
Well, we've got some affordable housing projects. And it's going to be owner-occupied. It's going to be built in townhouse projects. It's going to be built in Ardmore area, which is a very improving section of West Ashley. Ardmore is definitely, anybody who's living in Ardmore, I would hope they would hold on to their properties, because the prices are just astounding. And although you may get and I've told the people this last time I had the opportunity to meet with them, if you sell your property, you're going to get a good price. The problem is when you go to buy the next one, probably going to find it as unaffordable. So make improvements to where you are.
And what is the current home price for a home that is in Ardmore?
Believe it or not, some of those houses are now approaching $300,000. Yeah, and that used to be one of the private sector affordable areas. As far as some areas go, $300,000 is affordable compared to other areas. But for a lot of blue collar workers, that's still a challenge. Reaching $300,000 on a home. So it's still affordable. But you have a lot of retirees on fixed incomes that now own a piece of the rock, if you will, in Ardmore. And I'd like to see those people be protected, And one way you protect people like that is make sure they have current information. One of the, I think, fundamental aspects of gentrification is one person has a lot of information that's current, and another person doesn't. A lot of times the owner doesn't, and the person who's wishing to acquire your property does. They know the improvements that's coming, like drainage. They know the improvement to the quality of life, like the some of the park areas improvements that's already begun in Ardmore. The improvements to the West Ashley Bikeway. Some of that's already underway that comes through Ardmore. But if you know these things are coming, and the person's been there 25, 30 years, hadn't kept up, you may not be selling based on what the future is bringing, but based on what you've known from the past. And that's not a good bargaining position.
What will be the bargaining position after all of this?
Let me tell you, once information is powerful. Information leads to revenue. And I don't care what market you're in, whether you're down in Fifth Avenue in New York, or Wall Street in New York, or you in Orleans Woods, or Ashleyville, or Maryville, or Ardmore, Sherwood Forest, or out at Kiowa. Those people that have information will represent themselves best. Knowledge is power. It's true.
I want to go back to the DUWAP project because I want to know, what is the total project budget for this?
That's the thing. The project budget for DUWAP, compared to most drainage projects. Really, to answer your question, the budget hasn't been set, but it's probably going to be in the neighborhood of about 5 to 6 million. And when it comes to drainage projects, that's not expensive. A lot of these drainage, September Clark Spring Fishburne is rounding right at $200 million. The big problem with the Doo-Wop area is smaller pipes trying to drain a large area. Okay, so we're not going to have to put in deep shafts like you did on September Clark Spring Fishburne, or literally a $45 to $50 million pump station to pump the water into the river. We just need to get a connection of larger pipes draining in the right direction, ditches and pipes draining in the right direction. That's one of the things about most drainage areas west of the Ashley, James Island, and Johns Island. Most of those fixes are very cost effective. The most affordable way to fix a drainage problem is with a ditch and gravity flow. You can't do it any cheaper than that. And most of those areas, if you have proper ditching or proper piping flowing to a proper outfall that's been cleaned out, it works.
And what's the outfall in your area?
Well, those outfalls pretty much go out to the Stono River. They go underneath Savannah Highway out to the marsh that leads to the Stono River.
Yeah.
Good question.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you know what the drainage fund total right now is for Doo-Wop?
Well, like I said, until we get some of the engineering completed and get some of the bid information back, then that's really what's going to set your budget. It's kind of difficult to set the budget when you don't know what it's going to cost to construct it. Now, and you can't figure out how it's going to cost to construct it until you got a plan from which then to bid on.
Now, when it does come to fruition, do you believe that some of this money will come from the TIF?
No, it probably is going to come from the city's drainage fund. That's probably when you but let me tell you, we'll accept all sources. But anyways, it's probably going to come from the drainage fund. When we pay our water bill, a lot of times there's a fee on there that goes towards the drainage. And right now, that's bringing in, I don't know, 11, maybe 12 million a year, somewhere up in there. So it's a scramble to get those dollars. But I will say this: the tenor on council has been, if you look on a map of the city, we literally have drainage projects going on all around town. So,
speaking of the city council, Mr. Waring, as you know, a new city council is in place, and you're actually going to have one more coming in after the District 1 runoff here in a couple of weeks. But what is the mood? What is the tone? What is camaraderie right now on city council?
Actually, the camaraderie is pretty good. And I'll say, at last council meeting, we had a very healthy discussion on the Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Committee. And obviously strong feelings both ways, but the reason I said it was a good discussion, it wasn't an argument. It was a discussion. And it was somewhat, maybe it wasn't a debate, but it was a healthy discussion. So anytime you have a situation where differences occur and you have people speaking one at a time, yes, you can accomplish progress. The problem is when you get 2 and 3 or 4 people speaking, then you got an argument. You're not going to accomplish anything. I don't care what the subject.
And I know the city council voted 8-4 on December 21st to give initial approval to form a committee on the equity, inclusion, and racial conciliation, which has a new name, as you just mentioned.
Right.
Let me ask you this. What changed from August to December?
Well, as you know, the report wasn't accepted by council. So that report from the task force was not accepted by council. It failed, I think, by 1 vote margin. Okay. The task force that worked on that report for about a year is no more. Okay, so they've done their work when they passed the report forward. So those are 2 huge differences. And then the question becomes, what are we going to do going forward? It will be absolutely nothing. Everything that the city does, fair and balanced, as they say on Fox News, when it comes to how the city conducts its business or conducts its ordinance and rules, um, to the point to where we don't need to have these conversations going forward. It's my belief that we do need to have these conversations going forward. And there are things that still aren't fair and balanced. And the only way you're going to do that is, I believe, is to have a commission in place to take on the challenging subjects as to say, well, that's the way it was. So why should we change it now? And I'll give an example. There is a lot of times you find unfairness when it comes to zoning rules that are just flat out discriminatory. I mean, books have been written about it. Okay, how the government segregated America is one of it. But that said, we have some inequities in our zoning laws that are anti-affordable housing. And it wasn't designed to be that way, but that's the net results today. That's the unintended consequences. And some of those things can be corrected. And sometimes you do need to have that critical look from somebody on the outside who isn't fearful of political reprisals. Just from an objective standpoint, this wheel will work more efficiently if we oil it, if you will. So I think there are a number of things that a committee, number one, in that report pointed out. People hung on three things. I think there were like 125 suggestions, but people hung on three things and forgot about the other 122 suggestions.
Will this commission be fair and balanced?
It won't be because the effort wouldn't be there to do it. We not only need to speak to people that agree with us, we need to speak to people that disagree with us as well. So that shouldn't be political. That should be knowledgeable people coming to the table that's trying to fix a system to be fairer, I should say. And we use the term balance, but certainly fairer and more equitable to all, not just to some.
Speaking of which, what are those other net results that have been in result of anti, accommodations as far as affordable housing and whatnot?
Well, I'll tell you what. Right now, when you talk about building affordable housing in a historical district, you do anything in a historical district, it's going to increase the cost. Okay? Because an affordable product, if you will, that you can build James Island, Johns Island, West Ashley, up in the areas outside the historic district. Some of the materials you can't even use downtown in the historic district. Obviously, some of the zoning that applies downtown, that applies in the other areas, may not apply as well downtown. So there's something called a variance,
right,
an exception to the zoning. Right. One of the rules, and this is one of the things I think is discriminatory, is that you can't get a zoning and a variance, basically an exception to the zoning, for financial reasons. Why not, Quintin? For example, if you notice a lot of African American churches now have been leaving the peninsula, I guess following the population shifts. When they go to sell their sanctuary, if they say, well, we'd like to have it zoned general business, the answer is, well, why do you want to do it? So we can get a higher and better price for our property. The answer is going to be no. By rule, we can't consider financial situation. But the developer comes and buys it at a church and says, well, I'm not a minister. We're not going to put a church there. We want to put apartments there. And all of a sudden they get the zoning change. So they got instant equity because they were able to, zoning can create wealth or it can take it away. In the case of the churches, when they sell the building based on the current zoning and didn't get it changed to a higher and better class zoning, The developer got that equity or got that increased value, not in this case the church that sold. So anyway, why shouldn't our committees be able to consider the financial status or situation, whether it's a individual, a nonprofit, a partnership, or a corporation? You should be able to say, well, listen, I can't afford to pay these high property taxes. I got another piece of property on Johns Island that I can build my church on, or build my building on, and I need a variance to do that. That's one of the reasons I'm making the shift. The committees by ordinance can't make that consideration right now. It never was there. It's probably been there for, those rules have been around, probably set in place during the Jim Crow era. And those things need to be righted.
In what ways should the city continue to coordinate with the neighboring jurisdictions, that is, to implement economic development recommendations in your district?
When you mean neighboring jurisdictions, you mean other towns?
Yes, sir.
Like North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, that kind of thing?
Yes, sir.
I think we ought to coordinate. You see, right now, if we're doing things that's working, or North Charleston's doing things that's working that's still yet different from what we're doing, why not collaborate in the 3 or 4 advantages that North Charleston has found to work and the 2 or 3 that we found to work? If you put them together, all of a sudden you got 6 or 7 aspects that contribute to the bottom line of affordability. I don't think, and it's not intentional. I don't know where the collaboration is between municipalities. I don't know when they ever sit down and talk. I don't know how often the mayor of North Charleston speaks with the mayor of Charleston, and when they speak to the mayor of Mount Pleasant, or for that matter, James Island. Most are so busy doing their job for their own municipality that the environment for that collaboration doesn't take place. But I think the time has come for that to occur.
What advantages does the city have right now?
Well, I think when it comes to affordable housing, I think the city's very coordinated on. It's not a subject that has to be convinced. You have to convince, as I've seen it, any of the 12, well, soon to be 12. I don't know who the next person will be, but I would hope that they don't come in here thinking the need for affordable housing is over with. That's a problem in America, much less just Charleston. So, but let's put it like this: it's overwhelming. I have not seen an affordable housing project that doesn't normally pass with the unanimous vote or a near unanimous vote, and that's because the problem is realized by the stakeholders around the table.
Who should the city bring to this, as far as stakeholders, to the table for this issue?
For affordable housing?
Yes, sir.
I think we need more help from the state. For example, and I think this needs to be pushed from the standpoint of legality. You have to have a steady stream of revenue coming in to pay for affordable housing. I mean, every year. And one of the ways to do that is, I believe, fee income. For example, when anybody goes to get a building permit in the city of Charleston, I think a fee should be assessed that goes towards affordable housing or affordability. Now, to do that, we have to get permission from the state of South Carolina. I think it's a conflict in the law. Why? There's a whole body of law around home rule. In other words, the government that's closest to it, should rule. We have a problem with affordable housing in Charleston, city of Charleston. They may not have a problem with affordable housing in Baltimore or Hampton County. So if I'm a state representative from Baltimore or Colleton County or Hampton County, I may say, well, we don't have any problems with affordable housing, and they may not in those counties. So when you try to get a state law passed on something like that, the people in the rural areas, the representatives from the rural areas, may overcome those from the metropolitan area. That should be a rule that if we can set a fee for the city for affordable housing, we should be the arbiters of that. People should vote us in or out of office based on that. We have to yet hear from Columbia to even have the right to do that. And I just think that's wrong. In particular, when you're talking about getting the city of Charleston building permit, we're not getting the state of South Carolina building permit. So we need some help in Columbia to get some of those laws changed, because trying to do it with bonding, you just don't have enough bonding to do that. You have to have a steady flow of income. Just like when we buy a house ourselves, if we don't have a steady job that brings that money in every year, we're going to have trouble making our mortgage payment.
Yes, indeed. So let's fast forward and say, if the state approves this, how much money would this fee generate for the city of Charleston?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, I can tell you what. You see the boom cranes around Charleston. We've got a boom phase, an expansion phase going on right now that I won't say has never been presented, but I'd like to see the time when it was. Maybe during the WPA when after World War II, and men and women came back from World War II and they put people to work. But I believe that we're in the process of building more unaffordable housing than ever in the history of the city of Charleston. Let me repeat that a second time. We're in the process of building more unaffordable housing. And what I mean unaffordable for the people, unaffordable for Charlestonians who live here and in particular work either in the county or either city, North Charleston, James Island, the police, the firemen, the school teachers, the clerk at the hospitals, the clerk at Walmart. Those people can't afford the housing that's being built right now. And there's a policy that's put in place. We zone these properties for this unaffordable buildings to be built. Where's the zoning for affordability? Where's the incentives that you can create through zoning to say, if you build this affordable house, let me tell you the benefits the city will provide to you if you build affordable housing on this piece of land versus market rate housing. We've done a great job with market rate housing, not for affordable housing.
Okay. Where has property been rezoned to make it?
I mean, from a zoning standpoint.
Yes,
from
sir.
a zoning standpoint.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Where exactly let me just ask you bluntly, where is unaffordable housing in District 7?
Well, I go to some of the apartment complexes. Or if you go to some of the older neighborhoods. Some houses that, again, used to sell for $250, now selling for $350 and $400. Same house. 5 years later. So I would say when I mean unaffordable, for that policeman or that fireman, keep in mind that the jobs that I'm talking about. City Hall is symbolic of the problem. We do not have one employee that works in City Hall that lives on the peninsula. Now let me repeat that. We don't have one employee that works for the city of Charleston in City Hall and his office at City Hall that lives on the peninsula. Now, there was a time when all of them lived on the peninsula. Peninsula, you had the battery for the well-to-do, but the au pair or the maid that cleaned the house also lived on the peninsula and found affordability. Not anymore.
I'm moving around with the questions just a little bit, but let me ask you this. Well, let me go back. and this is a redundant question, Mr. Waring, but how should the city create a dedicated funding streaming for affordable housing development through zoning and other planning tools?
As I said, you're going to have to do it through some sort of fee income. I don't know that you do it through taxes. I think you do it through fee income. And I think you do it through something called, when you're talking about zoning, inclusionary zoning. In other words, if I'm going to go out here and build a subdivision of 200 or 300 homes, you mean not one of them going to be affordable? That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing right now. I mean, and it's not just the city of Charleston. All cities are doing that. Pretty much in the Tri-County area. Look at all the subdivisions being built in Mount Pleasant. You know what they said of where affordable housing is in Mount Pleasant? It's in the city of Charleston and North Charleston. If you don't believe it, it used to be that early morning traffic was leaving Mount Pleasant. Look at the traffic going into Mount Pleasant. Those are people going to work in Mount Pleasant. You know why? Because they don't live there. They found affordability someplace else. So the people that work in the fast food restaurants or the Walmart or the Target, in those cases, they don't live in Mount Pleasant. They live someplace else. And that's by zoning design. That's because you don't have inclusionary zoning. You know, if I'm going to build a new development, I should be required. If I'm going to build only $500,000 homes, the city in which I'm going to do that in doesn't only have $500,000 incomes. So if you don't have some sort of inclusionary zoning, which is not legal in the state of South Carolina, that's another problem where the state and cities have to get on the same page. I would hope get on the same page.
Where would inclusionary zoning be ideal in District 7, if it was possible?
District 7, it's a good question. District 7 is a mature district. There's not a lot of raw land that hadn't already been built upon. Inclusionary zoning can be involved where, let's say, if I had a piece of property that had that's being demolished. I'll give you an example. Right now on St. Andrews Boulevard, just on the front side of Ashleyville, used to be an old steel plant that's being torn down. It's already been torn down. It's a nice open piece of property. Now, I don't think they're going to put a steel plant back, but I don't know what's going to go there. But let's say they were going to put apartments back. Or let's say we're going to put a townhouse community there. I think they should be included. I think they should be required to put some affordable units there if you're going to build residential housing. That's how you do it in an area that's already been built upon. When you have areas, and so the majority, when I said District 7 is in an area that's already pretty much has been built out.
Right.
So, but when you demolish and you come back with, by the way, that steel plant was all single story. Well, suppose they came back with a 5-story complex there that was apartment. So you're going to get 5 times the buildable space than that one floor once afforded. Certainly you should be able to include some affordability on that. But right now we don't have the strength in our laws to be able to require that. The private sector has an upper hand right now.
Oh, okay. And how many units for affordability should be required in District 7?
You know, well, in District 7, the laws of the city, the ordinance applies to the whole city. So you don't want to create laws just for District 7 or District 9 for that matter. You want to hopefully create equity for the whole town. I am interested in anything that creates affordable housing in any district. Not only just District 7, but I mean any district, because, you know, people have the right to live, hopefully, where they're where they desire to live, hopefully. But the problem that gets me right now is so much affordable housing, what was affordable housing, is kind of being redone into market rate housing. You see it all over the peninsula. And you're beginning to see it in other areas as well. So the world just doesn't operate around the peninsula anymore. The majority of the population of this town isn't even on the peninsula. It's West Ashley, James Island, and Johnson. I think there's over, now this includes county residents, there's over 100,000 people that live West Ashley alone. So anyway.
Yes, sir. How do you further limit fill and build construction methods in areas vulnerable to future flooding and potential marsh flooding?
Well, when it comes to, when it comes to areas that's wetlands or that will leave the end buyer with a flooding problem. And a lot of times we know that now by engineering, by something called the topography, how high the land is. The city certainly has due diligence when new development occurs that the end user will not have a flooding problem. And if it gets to the point where you have to bring in that much fill to keep something from flooding, you're going to push water on somebody else, right? Because if you build your property up and your neighbor doesn't, water flows downhill. And obviously, that's why we had the Dutch dialogues that ran into updating our drainage rules, which are cumbersome and very strict. But by the same token, in developments in years past, can you imagine scraping together buying your first house and turns out that neighborhood floods and you had no knowledge of that prior to moving in? So the rules now are designed to prevent that. So, fill and build is something you have to do very carefully. Let's put it like that.
And how many of those Dutch dialogue recommendations has the city taken into consideration?
I don't have a running tally, but I can tell you what the Dutch dialogue certainly was a big plus. And I'll tell you why. The mindset of a city and of people, I think, has changed from the standpoint of it was a subject before, it is a prioritized subject now, which is something that I think it was a smaller cadre of people that spoke about it before. I think you have people talking about flooding from the affluent community all the way to the underserved community and everything in between. And that's been because of heightened awareness of what's happening to this place we call Charleston.
And I just met Mr. Dale Morris, that is, right before the holidays, so I hope to have him on Quintin's Close-Ups in the spring. But how do you hope the city will develop policies and processes to amplify environmental justice considerations in land use, infrastructure, and natural resources planning?
I think we need to do that regionally. I don't think we should be able to do that as a standalone city. And I'll tell you why, because some of that, what you're talking about, is very expensive. And in most cases, one city can't afford it alone. Mount Pleasant couldn't afford to build the Ravenel Bridge by itself. The city of Charleston couldn't afford to build the Ravenel Bridge by itself. But it took a region to be able to afford to build the Ravenel Bridge. A region who have cent sales tax, which means the whole county pays that tax. You follow me? Because that was a piece of infrastructure that everybody needed. The town of Mount Pleasant couldn't afford all the new schools over there by themselves. The city of Charleston couldn't afford the new schools by themselves. Same thing with North Charleston. It took a region to replace almost 70 some odd schools, which was in the 1.5 or 1.7 billion, whatever it was. One area couldn't do that by itself. And now some of the things you're talking about, I think some of those things, although we may speak about it as a standalone city doing it, I think we'd be wise to do it together as opposed to we fixed ours, now you go fix yours.
And how should they include the prioritization of environmental justice communities in improvements to the environment and analysis of potential negative impacts of projects on environmental justice communities?
When you say environmental justice, break that down for me. You're talking about water, you're talking about air pollution. I mean, what are you?
Yes, sir. Yes, that's in those particular categories, I should say.
Well, see, a lot of times when it comes to water, it's because the infrastructure dollars didn't come to those communities. Rosemount is a good example. The elected officials decades ago had monies, and they didn't bring the proper drainage system into Rosemount. And that's the fault of government. And we have to go back and fix those things, Quintin. We can't say, oh, well, that's Rosemount. No, sir. They tax-paying citizens today, and we need to accommodate them today. That's some of that inclusionary aspect that we're talking. Here we are getting ready to put a development called Laurel Island, which is right off the peninsula. And believe me, should that be built, that's going to be state-of-the-art drainage system. So we're going to have that done on Laurel Island, and we're going to let Rosemount remain as is. It's just wrong. Okay. So as we bring in drainage dollars, as the federal government comes in with an infrastructure bill, and we go and try to get our state senators and House of Representatives and our lobbyists in Washington to get some of this money coming from that $1 trillion bill down to the state of South Carolina. We need our local delegation to get some of that money to come to the cities where those fixes, the bigger pipes, the bigger drainage system can be put in place to help pay for it. As I said, we don't do this. If people tell you they do it by themselves, they're being untruthful.
Now, what do you do in the meantime?
In the meantime, you do have some dollars coming in. In the meantime, you can do small fixes. You may not be able to do the large one, but there are a lot of small projects that can alleviate flooding or drainage problem that's under the $1 million category. So if you needed $3 or $4 million for the total fix, well, let's say you needed $10 million for the total fix, and you had $1 million that could do a small fix in that area, why wouldn't you do it? Well, we're going to wait on the $10 million, and the people continue to suffer in stagnant water. No, you do what you can with what you have. And we do have some funding that we can do some small, and we're doing small projects with them. We did some small projects in Ardmore in December. So yeah, you know, when you do those small projects, it heighten the needs for additional dollars, and you can be more specific with your request. But when you don't address anything at all, then you become obsolete as the stakeholder in trying to provide solutions to the people that you swore oath that you would try to take care of their needs. The oath just didn't end on inauguration day. It goes on 352 days out of the year.
How's been addressed right now, Mr. Waring?
Say again?
What has been addressed? As you mentioned earlier. Yes, sir.
Are you talking about, again, which subject you're talking about? You said, what has been addressed? What subject?
You just mentioned that a lot, you know, if you don't address certain things, then things won't get done. What exactly has been addressed?
In the terms of, again, you're talking drainage, you're talking small projects. For example, we have this 3x3 committee that's talking about building this wall around the peninsula.
Right.
One of the representatives on that committee, on that task force, is from Rosemount. Now, I dare say we heard about more of Rosemount's concerns than I heard in my lifetime. And I'm 66. Okay? But that voice could have been shut out. That voice could not have been on that committee. And the gentleman did a wonderful job. And I got to tell you, people down on the Battery now have heard some of the issues in Rosemount. See, they have this thing I saw. I forget, maybe it was 60 Minutes or something like that, maybe a year or so ago, where they took people from affluent areas and people from underserved areas, and they brought them together just to speak about things that were in their neighborhood that wasn't in the other neighborhood. I think we could benefit from that in Charleston.
Should the city just create a sort of multi-layer approach to great infrastructure versus a seawall?
Well, that seawall is going to bring a healthy discussion, and I give the mayor credit for raising the topic. Now, how we going to pay for it is again going to be a wrestling match, but it has to be a wrestling team as opposed to a wrestling individual. I would hope it's going to involve federal dollars, state dollars, as well as city dollars. Okay? But there are a lot of stakeholders involved with that. The city, the county, the council of government, maybe even Commissioner of Public Works.
Right.
But I do, it's easy not to take on a challenging subject. But I've told the mayor that I appreciate Dale Marsh is a very smart guy. I really respect his knowledge base. And you can tell him I said so.
Cool.
But that said, when it comes to the how-tos of it, approaching this as one city only. Now, I'm just speaking for myself as an individual. I don't think it's the right approach because the sea level just isn't rising around Charleston. It's rising around Mount Pleasant, North Charleston, James Island, the unincorporated areas of Charleston County. Listen, I wish it was just Charleston. And that means all the other areas wouldn't have a problem also. But that's going to be something I think better served if we were to address it together as opposed to stand alone.
And I'm sitting right around the corner from the Commissioner of Public Works here in downtown Charleston. But let me ask you, with this seawall, do you believe the water will come due the storm drain and the creeks that's going to hold water in?
Listen, when national catastrophes happen, systems break down. We've seen that in we've seen that in New Orleans. We've seen that in Houston. We've seen Mother Nature is powerful. Okay, so I think all of the above. Quintin, I think can those things happen? I think the answer is yes. With engineering, I guess you say you can fix everything. We put a man on the moon and brought him back. But we also had Apollo 13, but we didn't think we were going to get him back at all. Systems broke down. I think right now, because of revenue, we're in a position of having to do one or the other. And I think that's a sad situation. You have to make that choice for people. I think what you do is you go for the broader, you go for the best practice. And that's why I credit raising the subject. I don't know who else would have raised the subject. I don't hear the people in Mount Pleasant talking about it right now. I don't hear the people in North Charleston speaking, or the county speaking about it right now. And that's where we have to reach out and not talk to them about our solution only as a city, but we should reach out and talk to them about a wholesome solution for the region.
Have you heard their solutions?
I don't think that conversation has been engaged yet. And what I'm asking for is that conversation to be engaged. So I think those conversations can be engaged. When we do things as a region, let me tell you, we leave the state when we do that. Okay. And if you said, what are you talking about? Again, I can remember when we had 77 schools in Charleston County, and probably 76 of them were dilapidated. Nobody says that today. Why? Because we all joined forces and pushed in the right direction together. I can remember when, when our roads and bridges, and we still have trouble with some roads and bridges, but not like we did 25 years ago. I remember we needed money for a rapid bus transit system. We all pushed in the right direction, and guess what? The rapid bus transit system is in the making as we speak. We did those things together, not because, not standalone.
I have 3 more questions because the sun's going down and my battery's running out.
All right.
But
Okay.
it's 5:06 on a Wednesday.
Right.
But where should the city promote the creation of additional park and ride routes, such as the Hospitality and the Peninsula route, to connect all areas with key job centers in the district, particularly District 7?
You know what? That's the hard part of a rapid bus transit system, in particular in an area that's already developed. Because that means you have to buy something out, so to speak, to create the space for somebody to park so they can go ride. Some of it in some of the established areas can be done through collaboration. For example, you take the mall. I dare say we can find park and ride at the mall today. But can we do that around Christmas season? Probably not. Can we do that around Easter season? Probably not. But there would be times and periods where we can do that. In some cases, believe it or not, hospitals can help, because hospitals tend to have a lot of parking, and it fluctuates. Most of the time, when you go to most major hospitals, now I'm not saying Medical U, that's probably the largest employer, being the exception, but you may be able to get some collaboration there. And one part of it too is creating jobs closer to where people live. Okay. So they won't have to, drive 20 miles to get to work. And some of that's happening too.
Oh, okay. How then should the city of Charleston advocate for additional rapid transit routes along Sam Rittenberg Corridor, Savannah Highway, the Glenn McConnell Parkway, Farley Road, and Clements Ferry Road?
Some of that's going to be done with feasibility studies. It's one thing to run the bus down there, but you need to know how many people are going to be getting on the bus. Okay? The last thing you want to do is be running it down Sam Rittenberg and the bus is empty. You want to make sure the need is there, obviously. And then obviously you want to involve some of your larger employment centers, because Ropus and Francis has a big parking need. Obviously, Medical U does. Boeing, for example, has is there where they can employ that. So the large employment centers would have to be involved with that too, as an incentive. Hey, if you bring in rapid bus transit system, yes, we get the employees to join, and we'll supplement it. Okay, we help supplement the cost.
How should the city assign priority to areas in greater needs of improved infrastructure and amenities in tangent, that is, with anti-displacement protections, I should say?
Well, a lot of times with infrastructure, and well, especially with drainage infrastructure, you don't really need to displace people. Now, when you start bringing in new roads, that's different. Okay, but water and sewage and ditching, it's an unusual situation where somebody's going to be displaced for that type of infrastructure. Now, when it comes to roadways, as I said, that's different.
Yeah. And how would you strongly encourage development of housing in incompatible mixed use, mixed income, meaning the market rate and subsidized units mixed together with the same development in neighborhoods and in close proximity to parks, bicycle and pedestrian facilities, public transportation, schools, grocery stores, and civic uses in District 7?
That's a lot in that question you just asked us now. Um, you know, as I said earlier, District 7 is already a developed area. The reason we talk about these subdivisions is because they're already there. We're not talking about a future subdivision in the case of Ardmore or Sherwood Forest or East Oak Forest or West Oak Forest or Heathwood. Those subdivisions are already there. So we want to have the bus system close at hand, which, Highway Ashley River Road is one of the routes right now. That's actually used pretty well. But again, some of that, Quintin, just because you won an election doesn't make you all knowing. One of the best things we do, one of the best things that I've done, that I've had the privilege of doing, is you'll be shocked and amazed at how many good ideas come from people. People come up to you all the time, and a lot of times we don't get the credit for it now. But if you ask, well, where did you originally find that out from? A lot of time it comes from a constituent that says you need to create this bike path here, or I don't see. I see the bus cutting through our neighborhood and nobody's on it. It's hard for you to get that feedback by yourself. One of the best things we could do is have constituents talking to the stakeholders to carry that message where decisions are being made.
Yes, sir. How should the city create a permanent funding stream for construction and maintenance of sidewalks and other pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure citywide?
Well, again, when it comes to new development, we require the developer to put in those sidewalks. Or when it comes to renovations, if there's sidewalk that needs to be repaired with those renovations that are taking place, we require the developer to do that. And I'll tell you why. Sometimes when you're renovating something, you got big trucks, concrete trucks driving over the sidewalk, and what happens? It cracks up the sidewalk. Well, guess what? You got to pay for that. There was a time when government paid for that. Not anymore. Some of that is improved by a lot of times when you ride by new construction, when you look at those sidewalks, being paid for that developer, by that developer.
Wow. And what terms does the city, that is, grow this capacity to improve maintenance of existing drainage infrastructure, particularly in your district?
It's difficult. And I'll tell you why. Right now, we normally have 7 ditch cleaning crews and drainage crews. Right now, we have about 2 to 3. Employers from the private sector are hiring away some of our employees. In some cases, paying them 50, 60% more to leave, which means we have a fixed budget and we have jobs, but it's just hard to get people to come and work currently at those wage rates. So we're going to have to increase our pay scale to be able to get the workers in there, the essential work. By the way, I've never heard that term prior to COVID, but you really need to see how sanitation workers, ditch cleaning,
Yes.
maintenance crews, when those people don't show up, business as well as government grinds to a slow halt. So that's one of the things we're going through right now in public works is that some of our truck drivers, commercial licensed truck drivers, are being hired away by the private sector and being given paid bonuses, which is good for them. And I don't knock any man who's trying to earn a living for the family. I understand that. But our challenge now is raising the revenue to pay our people more so we can deliver services to the people that they expect.
What will that pay scale be the next 5 years?
It can't be that far behind the private sector. For example, some of our commercial truck drivers make about 18, not quite $20 an hour. Some of the commercial people now paying $35 an hour for certain commercial truck drivers. That's a challenge to go from pay scale of 18 to $20 an hour, and your competition, which is now the private sector, says, "You come over here, Quintin, I'll pay you $35 an hour." What are you gonna do as a man with your family? You're gonna go and take that 25. Now the government, people saying no new taxes. We don't want any no new taxes, but we still need these services delivered. So when you don't have people that can do the work, the reality is you've got to raise more revenue to pay people more to deliver police protection, fire protection, trash protection, maintenance protection, so forth and so on.
And my last question to you, Mr. Waring, is this. Speaking of the private sector, what will be the top 4 job creators in the city of Charleston in the next 5 years?
And top, I think it's not going to be very much unlike what you see today. Hospitals always, in most cities, tend to be one of your leading employers. Colleges and universities tend to be one of your leading employers. Now, of course, in the city of Charleston, we have industry, but we don't have industry on the lines of Boeing, okay, or on the line of Mercedes. Okay? Those are up in North Charleston, but the people that work there, it's just that people from North Charleston working at Boeing. People all over work at Boeing. So I think you're going to see that in certainly 5 years, that consistency remain. Colleges, universities, some of your major manufacturers being there, some of the larger employer sites, and of course government. We've got the federal government out at naval weapon stations and all of that. So that's almost like that's a site that has a multi-billion-dollar impact on this region, the naval weapon station out there. So I think you still will see the larger employer size in 5 years now. Obviously, forecast in 15, 20 years out may be a little bit different, but that's an easier answer in 5 years to speak to than it is 20 years from now.
And how many people do you expect to move into your district, District 7, in the next 10 years?
Well, if I went off the last census, the population in this district didn't grow that much. You'll see the large growth taking place where the new houses and apartments being built. The fastest growing area, believe it or not, the single fastest area, I'll ask it of you, where's the fastest area in the city of Charleston from a population growth? I'll give you one guess.
I'll take the West Ashley.
It's a big area, man. Johns Island.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
By far, it's actually Johns Island.
Right.
Okay. Most people wouldn't guess that. Most people would probably say Daniel Island. But the fastest growth area in the city of Charleston has been Daniel Island. Most of the, there's not been a lot of growth, believe it or not, in population on the peninsula. There's not been a lot of growth. And again, any of the older in the If you took 526 and came towards the Ashley River bridges, there hadn't been that much growth in those areas. Now, in the outer West Ashley area, some refer to areas beyond 526, then you'll see a lot of growth in those areas. And as I said, District 7 is a district inside the Beltway, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Keith Waring, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
All right, Dr. Washington. Look forward to the next time.
Well, one of these days, I hope to get an honorary degree like you.
You'll get it. You'll get it. We'll see to it. You'll get it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Same here. Take care, Quintin. Always a pleasure. All right, bye-bye.